Everyone, I will call the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order on this day, Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. We begin our meeting with the pledge. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll have a motion to approve.
I so move. Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. At this time, we do have a public comment period. Anyone is welcome to come up to the microphone and have 5 minutes of our time if there's something that you wish to talk about other than what you're already here to talk about. Is there anybody in the audience? I guess not, so I'll turn to our board if there's some commissioner that's received comments.
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Sullivan.
So this is a comment from Don Davison of 583 South Shore Drive, Grand Marais, Minnesota 55604. We are on a fixed income. Your county employees inflated our home value far beyond what any sane person would pay, and yet you use these inflated values to tax us. This is not only unethical, it should be criminal. You don't represent us, you represent a bunch of greedy county employees.
Anyone else? Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, which is fairly lengthy, so I'll read it off and then ask for any questions. The consent agenda consists of claims, the minutes from our past September 9th meeting, the county investment policy revision, approve the hire of Marina Fujimoto and the adult mental case manager, approve the hire of Olivia Bonander as adult home and community-based service supervisor, approve the promotion of Caleb Johnson to maintenance technician, resignation of Lily Gruber-Schulz, resignation of Stacy Schmidt, county parks and trails membership removal appointment. Would anyone like to pull anything? Commissioner White?
I would like up at the awarding of the different, to where I need to be here. So I say this right. The approval or awarding of the roads for the subordinate districts.
C.
Winter
C.
maintenance?
Yes, thank you.
So you would like C? Okay.
Just so the public can know who those entities were for what roads.
Okay. So we have C. Anything else? Commissioner Gamble?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I'd like to pull G, H, and I.
Here we go.
Okay, so we'll take C, and since Robbie's here, we'll put that where Robbie is going to speak, and then G, H, and I, we will put that before or after human resources. Thank you. Anything else?
No.
If there's nothing else, then I'll move on. Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda, consent agenda as amended, removing items C, G, H, and I.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So moving on to our first presentation, Aggregate Resource Mapping Program, I'll invite Neva to come forward for an introduction.
Good morning, Commissioners. I just really briefly wanted to introduce our guests. They traveled up here yesterday. We have Heather Arends with the Minnesota DNR and Dr. Howard Moores with the University of Minnesota. In April 2023, the Cook County Board of Commissioners passed a resolution to request our county be added to the Minnesota DNR's Aggregate Resources Mapping Program, which essentially will produce a map that will show the aggregate potential in different locations throughout our county. This is going to serve as a decision-making tool for aggregate pits, as well as an opportunity for our highway department to be able to do appropriate planning measures. And this was also a partnership with our Soil and Water Conservation District. So our three departments worked together to secure funding to get our county to kind of bump the line from the other counties that had also requested to be in this program, because we know that aggregate resources are scarce in our region and highly affecting our cost of development. So this is our attempt to try to help give us more information. So without further ado, Heather Ahrens and Dr. Morse.
Okay. Good morning and welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for having us. My name is Heather Ahrens. I'm the manager of the mineral potential section of the DNR and supervise the aggregate resources mapping program.
And I'm Howard Moores. I'm a professor at UMD, sort of partially retired from teaching 2 years ago, but I still have active programs like this one with the state and with other entities also. Thank you.
And so the reason why we're up here is just to give you an update and to kind of outline what the project will look like, and then just some of the timelines and products that you can expect to receive once the project is done. So we are directed by the legislature to map aggregate resources for local governments. And the purpose of this is so that they have data to plan for resources, not just aggregate resources, but also other resources that can be sometimes, I don't want to use the word conflict, but it can sometimes overlap, and where you need to make resource decisions. And so our goal is to produce really data-rich GIS data sets that are very easily understood by non-geologists. And so you can kind of look at what an aggregate map will look like. A county administrator or a township administrator can easily put this on their wall and identify where there is high, medium, low, and limited potential. It also will go through and map all the gravel pits, including their status, if they're active, inactive, reclaimed, how they're reclaimed, whether it's naturally or passively, partially. And so you'll have a very detailed data set, which your staff can then use to further manage the gravel pits within your county. And then we also provide technical support long after a map is done. I've gone to counties who've had maps done 20 years ago, and they'll have questions about just general aggregate resources. So we'll gladly come and talk to in public meetings or to the or with staff to discuss planning and permitting of aggregate resources. So like I said, this is about making sound land use decisions, protection, for example, for protection of water quality and surface groundwater, and evaluate these overlapping resources that can sometimes inform whether you want to open up a gravel pit in an area or not. And then the purpose of this, behind the statute, is that this would eventually get incorporated into land use decision making, so that, aggregate resources are non-renewable. They were deposited by glaciers, and it will take another glaciation to resupply aggregate resources. So we just want to make sure that future generations have access to these materials. So as Neva said, Cook County passed a county board resolution in 2023. This is being sponsored with a grant from the Soil and Water Conservation District, as well as the County Highway Department. And it's a complicated county geologically. And so it worked out that Howard retired and we were able to subcontract with him, and he was interested. And so as a result, this has become kind of a pet favorite project because of how collaborative this is, and how, from Cook County, it's the planning and zoning, the highway department, soil and water, between the DNR and then the University of Minnesota. And it's just been wonderful working with your staff. They've been leading the charge for this, being very creative on how to get it done quicker and faster. And so that's why we are here today. And just as a quick little background, what is sand and gravel? It is both, what we expect. It's, sand and gravel, but it's also mechanically crushed bedrock. So we use the term aggregate to include both sand and gravel and crushed stone resources versus, really clay-rich glacial till, which is not a good source of sand and gravel. And so what we do is we figure out the geologic story. What did the glaciers do? What is the role of the bedrock, especially in Cook County? And map the glacial geology. As you notice, there's just, in Minnesota, there are just natural scarcity areas. And the Arrowhead is one of them. There's just not a lot of sand and gravel. And so our job is to map outside the 7-county metro area, and we are focusing in the Arrowhead regions right now and in southwestern Minnesota. Also the important thing about understanding the stories of what the glaciers did is that it informs the quality of the sand and gravel. So we're able to understand, the transport of materials and what type of bedrock it's picking up and how that might impact the quality of the sand and gravel. And not all sand and gravel is the same. Some produce really strong products, and some have deleterious materials. That's what we call it. And so we'll be looking at that as we're mapping. And the reason is that we all use aggregates. And the biggest consumer of aggregates is actually purchased by public tax dollars. And that's the underlying reason why the DNR was directed to do this work. In rural areas, that percentage is much higher. It can be up to 80 to 90% of the aggregate used is paid for by public tax dollars. And it's can be classified as an urban issue where people are just building onto aggregate deposits. But, if you look at where our largest network of roads is, it's not the highway or interstate highway, it's our gravel roads. And that can be paid for by, townships money. So the issue is just the high cost of transportation. The further you transport aggregate, the more it costs. And so it's needed at all levels. It's a state issue, it's a local issue, and understanding where it's located is key to being able to keep costs down and to plan for the future. So like I said, we want really easy to read, data-rich information. So we'll produce a printed map that is can explain the whole project. It's a standalone product. In that, we'll have a gravel pit database, all of our field observations, aggregate potential. There's a database for the aggregate potential, and those are all in GIS. And we'll give that GIS package to county staff, but we also put it online, what's called Aggregate Mapper, and it functions just like Google Maps, where people can go in and click then to see how the data behind all of the maps are. And so, we'll map like what is the landform, what's the overburden, how thick the potential sediment might be, so that's where that information is stored within those databases. We were in a little bit of a hiatus for our mapping program, but in 2018 we received LCCMR funding, and so that's what restarted the program. So timelines, we've already completed pretty much the data compilation, so we use all existing data that we possibly can get our hands on. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. And then field work, we're going through field work. Probably we'll go into a little bit of October. Digitizing is ongoing, and then hopefully the final product, the contract ends in 2027, but we expect that we'll finish early. Other project objectives will be that we'll reach out to Grand Portage and just see if they're interested in being mapped as well. And then, but the boundary waters will not be mapped, so we will be excluding that from the map. Yep, so gravel pit inventory, and we connected with your highway department, so we'll get information from them as well. We look at logs and well logs to help figure out, what's underneath the ground. We'll use, like I said, existing information like geologic maps, and this is it. Oh, this is yours, isn't it? Am I going?
Well, no, yes, but that's okay.
Get me going, I can't stop.
You know it as well as I do. Full disclosure, I've known Heather for 35 years, and this all came about, we were on a road trip to Springfield, Missouri for a meeting, Geological Society of America meeting, and she was complaining about having to train someone to map, to work up here in northeastern Minnesota, starting in Cook County, and maybe eventually going into Lake County, and she really wasn't looking forward to training someone to do this. And I said, well, just hire me. And so here I am. I've been mapping glacial deposits for, well, I hate to say it, nearly 50 years. I actually started with the DNR back in 1980, mapping superficial geology, glacial deposits, and peat resources. And then my PhD, I went back to graduate school, and my doctoral dissertation was looking at glacial landforms and glacial history of central Minnesota, large part of central Minnesota, and that's been my research area ever since. So getting into the sand and gravel stuff, so Heather, can we go back one?
Yeah.
So Heather mentioned that we're using all the available data. That's the big thing, compiling all the available data. What you see up here is the Minnesota well index, located and unlocated wells. Most of those wells have a stratigraphy that was described by the well driller at the time the well was drilled. And so it'll in particular list the thickness of the glacial sediments, the overburden, if you want to call it that, above bedrock. And oftentimes the description depends on the well drillers, but the well drillers' descriptions are pretty good, particularly when they call out something as sand and or gravel, because well drillers are typically looking for water, and the sand and gravel is where the water is, or in your case, a lot of the wells are bedrock wells. But still, they're actually recharged by the surface glacial sediment seeping into the bedrock. And so well drillers know where you find water, and so their assessment of what is sand and gravel is usually pretty accurate, even though they're not trained geologists. When it gets into bedrock and other more obscure types of deposits, the descriptions aren't as good. But for our purposes, those are less important. So the well driller's information is really important. Bedrock geology maps and quaternary glacial maps that have already been made are extremely important. See someone else's, but they're usually for a different purpose, right? The bedrock maps are mapping bedrock, which of course is a source potentially for crushed stone, crust resources, even dimension stone. And the quaternary glacial maps typically are, again, for a different purpose, maybe to support groundwater, surface water studies, and so forth. But they're all extremely valuable in compiling aggregate resource information. The most valuable information is the underlying map you see in the gray up there, which is the LIDAR, the high-resolution digital elevation models that Minnesota has at a resolution of 1 meter, and in many cases less than a meter. Decades ago, we used to rely on aerial photographs, usually aerial photographs flown in winter with leaves off the trees, and that was the primary source of high-resolution landscape information. LIDAR has created a whole new environment for interpreting landforms. you can see items on the surface the size of, with the high-resolution LiDAR, the size of this microphone. Something you just unheard of a couple of decades, well, even a decade ago. That is a superficial geology map. That's a glacial geology map on top. Actually, take that back. That's bedrock. But here's the LiDAR. So the initial land. So what we do to map the aggregate is we map the initial glacial landforms from the LiDAR. And you can zoom in and zoom out on that, and like I said, the resolution is great. So you can identify bedrock landforms and glacial landforms. Usually they're easy to tell apart. There are some cases where it's much more difficult, but in any case, we'll be going out and doing field work and field checking all of these units, or as many of them as we can get to. Here's a LiDAR, a little closer up LiDAR image of. Is there a pointer on this?
There is on the other one. Yeah.
But it's really not important. We can, labels are fine. So here's an example of the LiDAR. Notice where it says Glacial Lake Duluth beaches. You can see those, they're called strand line, we call them strand lines. You can see where the higher levels of Lake Superior were very prominently because of these wave-cut scarps. And then just inland from where it says Glacial Lake beaches, just before you get to, what, is that Devil Track? Mm-hmm. Before you get to between where it says Glacial Lake Duluth beaches and the lake, you'll see some kind of linear topography that runs east and west. That's actually one of the very prominent moraines of the Superior Lobe as it advanced, its last advance about 10,000 years ago down the Lake Superior Basin. It's called the Marquette Moraine, named after some exposures in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so these landforms, they stand out really well, right? And then, of course, all of them have different sorts of aggregate potential. Here's an area up in the central part of the county. I just put this up to show some of the landforms. If you look at the bottom of the image, you'll see this sort of almost north to south, sort of south-southeast to north-northwest trending ridges. Those are actually drumlins or flutes of the Superior Lobe as it advanced north in the county here. In contrast, you'll see in the northwestern part of that image, the upper left part of that image, you'll see some oriented landscape going to the southwest. That's actually landscape of the Rainy Lobe, ice that flowed in from Canada. And those, again, are also drumlins. And then there's a whole series of landforms in the middle that look like sort of a mottled, broken-up structure. They're a very interesting subglacial landform. It's produced subglacially. It's called Rogan Moraine, but and then running diagonally across that whole image is a ridge. You can see it sort of from the north, from the upper right down to the lower left, right across the middle. You'll see a linear ridge that runs through there. A lot of people would say it looks like an esker. Eskers are glacial landforms that contain, that actually are great sources of aggregate. Turns out that's not an esker. It's actually an ice marginal landform, similar in the way it forms. As the last ice advanced up out of the Lake Superior Basin to that position, diagonally across that image, because the topography to the north is higher, it ponded up a lake out in front. And so all the sediment coming off the ice was deposited in that ice marginal ridge. And again, so the aggregate potential there is very high. Doesn't mean it's all easy to get to. A lot of it has a lot of boulders and so forth, but that's an area that would be high in potential. So anyway, this is just an example of how the landforms are used and delineated. And here's a first cut delineation. Go through and define these landforms based upon their morphology, and then go out. You don't have to visit every one. This is the beauty of glacial landform assemblage mapping. There are multiple delineations in there that have the same landform. So if you go out and visit a couple of these, or as many as you can, in whatever time and money we have, you can characterize them and apply that characterization to any occurrence of them. So we don't have to go visit every inch of the county to map this accurately. And so I think I'll turn it back to Heather here.
Thanks, Howard. So like I said, I went through what our products are. You can expect a map, you can expect GIS data, and then our goal is to get this out to the public in an easy way. Anyone can request a map from us for free, and we'll send it to them. We'll give you a stack, and that really is the meat of what we're going to be doing. And I just want to circle back that, you know, your staff have been amazing to work with, and that connection between like water quality and conservation with area mapping is a difficult one. It's not an easy one to piece together, but it actually goes quite hand in hand. And so you need all of this information to be able to make sound resource decisions about, you know, overlapping resources. So it's been a pleasure to work with them.
Well, thank you so much. We are a complicated county, that's for sure. And I often think when I go to Thunder Bay, they got all the rich farmland, but we got the beauty of the shore. Could you just explain a little bit about why the BWCA is excluded?
Madam Chair, members of the board, because mining is not allowed within the BWCA. And so even if we were to map, you wouldn't be able to access the sand and gravel within the park boundary.
Okay. We've been involved in a situation where we are receiving resource money for the boundary waters, and go on and on and on about that. But I just wanted to know why.
Sure.
Yeah, I understand the mineral part, yes. And I think the engineers that are here right now particularly enjoy this. The fact that we're always dealing with gravel, we never know where the gravel pits are, where they will be. So this is really fascinating once we are able to receive that information. And so we'll receive copies in the future. Okay, great, thank you. Any comments or questions? Commissioner White?
You were talking about well drillers. They all drill core samples, correct? And they send them off to the state, and do you make use of, they send them somewhere, and there's a repository of core samples from every well that's been dug, at least in this county?
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, my group manages the drill core library in Hibbing, and it's when you do exploratory borings for mineral exploration, there's a state law saying that you need to submit at least a quarter core to the state, but that does not apply to water wells. So the water wells are often, the materials aren't preserved for water well drilling, and but they are for exploratory borings.
So maybe our well guy just has his own library
Maybe.
of core samples for the last 4 or 5 decades.
Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Heather and Howard, appreciate it. The question I have is, if you come in and we work together to identify all of the topography and the likelihood of gravel existing, because of school trust lands are revenue generating, and a lot of that can be relative to mining, which is gravel mining and things. So I'm assuming when we look at it, other than the boundary waters, we're just looking at everything, which includes our school trust lands, to know where that resource exists then.
Madam Chair, members of the board, that is correct. We will map all lands, federal lands, state lands, and that is directed by statute. And so, and including school trust lands. And that is correct that we have a constitutional amendment and duty to manage them in a way that is beneficial and produces revenue for the school trust. And so that will be a bonus in being able to identify those school trust lands that have area potential.
As a follow-up, when we had a presentation on school trust lands a few years back, that about 86% of the revenue generated was a result of basically the mining component, which included our gravel. So it's
it's good to be informed and understand on what that benefit originally was intended for as to funding purposes, and to see that, potential that exists given the resource that is on that property, so.
That is correct, and we actively, the mineral potential section actively, not advertise, but market school trust lands, and we have a very active leasing program, and in the last 7 years, we've been able to triple revenues off of school trust lands as it relates to sand and gravel.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
we'll look forward to the information so we can study our gravel a little more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, item number 5, in land services, we have a conditional use permit before us.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we had said that we would have our Highway Department address 3C.
Yes, I was going to have that at the, right before the Parks and Trails.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. At the September 10th Planning Commission meeting, they reviewed a conditional use permit submitted by Alex Schauer. This is a conditional use permit for a third dwelling on his property along Lake Superior. He has a land use permit issued to build 2 dwellings right now, and then the third structure is currently for a bunkhouse. So this is a conditional use permit to essentially convert the bunkhouse into what we would call a dwelling that would have sanitary and kitchen facilities. The Planning Commission reviewed the request. There were no written or verbal comments at the public hearing portion, and after some discussion, the Planning Commission felt that this use was compatible with the zone district, particularly due to the small size and nature of that third dwelling. The property owner plans to do vacation rentals that are licensed use for the 2 dwellings, and then this third one is proposed to be for himself or a caretaker on the property. And the Planning Commission did propose a few conditions, and it was recommended unanimously for approval with the findings and conditions noted in your packet.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I hear none, so I'll wait for a motion. Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for the conditional use permit for a third dwelling at 6558 Highway 61, Zone Single Family Residential.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes for you.
Thank you.
Okay. So before we have the Parks and Commission report, I'll have the engineers come and address one of the questions that Commissioner White asked about for more public information.
Yeah. What I would like is just if you could read out who was, I mean, we know they're the low bids, and just who will be taking care of the roads. That's all, not the prices. It's all online. It's all in front of us. But there are many that are not looking at a screen. And so if you could just say who's going to be doing Irish Creek Road and who's going to be, that's all.
Yep, and again, all of these are based on lowest bid. So the award, what our recommendation is, we award the contracts to the low bidders: Mike Rose Excavating for Evergreen Road, Greg Geckes for Mile of Pine, White Pine Construction for Voyager Point and Little Ollie, W Labor LLC for Rosebush Hill and West Rosebush Lane, and Labota Grading for Irish Creek.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to award the contracts to the low bidders, just listed.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for the
Thank you.
info. All right. So now we will move on to an updating on the Parks and Trails Commission.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. So as some of you may or may not be aware, the commission put in the budget for 2025 to have planning for Sawtooth Bluffs built into the budget. Since then, the Cook County Parks and Trails Commission has been very busy trying to gauge the interest of the community in, what amenities they'd like in the park. Numerous meetings with media, city council, committee of the whole here with the county. And then also doubling the amount of meetings we've been having, from 6 to 12 every month. So just in the efforts, given that the commissioners gave us this task, we've been busy trying to accomplish it. As you know, we've had issues finding administration, and as well just getting commitment from the city of Grand Marais to engage in a joint powers process to determine kind of how to steer the park. So in discussions with the city of Grand Marais, they intimated that they'd like to see some plans for what the county would like to do with the park. In those discussions, it was suggested that we engage with the landscape architecture firm to begin the process of achieving regional designation for the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission. So in the past couple of months, I have engaged with a couple of landscape architecture firms, came up with some numbers as to what it might take to achieve this regional designation, very similar to what the city of Grand Marais went through with their rec park process. And so in talks with the Parks and Trails Commission, it was identified that we wanted to engage in a more transparent process about how we were coming up with, an amount to pay an architecture firm to get us across the finish line for this Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails designation. Yeah, so just coming to you today in efforts to, hopefully be allowed to engage in an RFP process to determine, one, what kind of amenities we'd like to have in the park, two, to begin the process of appointing a joint powers board and engage in an agreement with the city, and just finalize what the community would like to have in the Sawtooth Bluffs Park. And if we are successful in achieving this regional designation, it would open up both the county and various trails groups to begin planning and constructing various pieces of the park. So with that, I'll shut up and let you guys go ahead, Tim.
Just to sum it up as well, is that this plan is basically, it's kind of a twofold thing. Yes, the original Sawtooth Bluffs plan is several years old, and the Parks and Trails Commission has been struggling to kind of look to see how current it is and should it need to be updated. And also what we had realized, what we had intended for the original plan to do is to be able to reach regional designation on it, which opens up a lot more grant funding and everything like that. Which is what the city had recently done for their rec park area. The existing plan doesn't meet that threshold for regional designation. So last year we came to the board to get those funds to be able to have it kind of twofold. Like I said, kind of update that plan and then get it to a point where it's going to be able to be regionally designated. We anticipated then and still anticipate that the city would participate in the cost of that. We don't know exactly what the costs or what the overall costs are. So we had plugged in the 30 into the budget just as a benchmark on that. With discussion with Brady, there may be some alternate type of funding capacity available that would not necessarily dip into the general funds for that budget area. So at this point, we're just looking to actually be able to get the RFP out, which doesn't commit us to anything. What it does is it solidifies and brings in additional information, brings us more solid information to be able to have those meetings between us and the city, formulate that joint powers agreement and board, and be able to move forward with more accurate information in terms of how much that plan would cost to getting us to that level of regional designation. So we're throwing it out there just for this particular step, and we would obviously, in between that time, work with anybody that needs additional information. But this is, again, non-committal. It's just going out for requests for proposals.
Okay, I'll open it up for questions or comments. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tim and Mitch. First off, I'll say, and I've had conversation with Mitch on this, that I have a great deal of respect for the position that you find yourself in, Mitch, in a part-time position in this, and having clarity on direction and knowing so that you can be a good steward of the responsibility entrusted to you. So just recognizing that and prefacing my comments. And the other component part is the fact that I'm coming on and with a lot of this that has preceded my position on the board. So I leave room for that, for clarity on my part. As if we looked at the Greater Minnesota Recs and Parks, the master plan requirements, there are so many component parts to this, multiple component parts. If it's something we deal with on a daily basis, like Howard did for 50 years in geography, it's a little bit easier. But when it comes to us and it's something new on our plate, then we take what we know and there's so much we don't know. In regard to the parks and trails, the component parts that we look at, I see this issue of the regional designation is something I've identified because it provides opportunities for financing. The other component part is a joint powers agreement with the city, which is foundational to where we go with this. When you look at development costs, when you look at ongoing maintenance costs, when you look at staffing, when you look at revenues and distribution. The other thing is that this regional designation, as I've expressed before in the Parks and Trails Committee meeting, is that we can apply for that on our own. We can do that work, and in many cases, understanding that and going through that process on our own is something that informs us and better positions us for what we do in the future in this whole area. So identifying all these component parts is important. We did a survey. There was a Survey Monkey survey. Out of that survey for the local residents, it was identified that in the comments that came back as, do we feel we need this park? Is it something that you would avail yourself of? What kind of amenities would you like to see? And 55% of the responses that came back in that survey, Monkey survey, was negative comments relative to real genuine concerns. So if you look at local population, understanding really where our community in that regard is an important component. So when I look at the looking for regional designation, looking at the joint powers, looking at roles and responsibilities, defining what kind of entity will it be, and costs related to that, public informed decisions as to where we go with this, I think we have an awful lot of work that we need to do that should precede any expenditure that hasn't that clarity. So my recommendation on top of that is that we have this Preserve the Bluff committee that's been working very hard to try to see what we can do to be able to acquire that 80 acres. And that meeting that is scheduled, which I encourage that both groups would get together to see where our shared values were, is coming up September 30th. So what I would say and recommend is that we would do an outline of steps and how we think those need to be aligned in proper order to be good stewards of funding and resources, and also to give you clarity in your position so that you know, what am I supposed to be doing here? Any way we can help you in that regard, we certainly, at least I certainly am willing, and I know the board would be willing to help us so that we can follow a procedure that is best practices. My recommendation would be to table this and develop that game plan and address it moving forward. I know the financial components is sometimes a component that drives us because we don't want to lose revenues that have been designated. But I think the willingness and the understanding, I'd rather see a procedure that follows best practices, identifies many of these things, so that if we in fact did hire somebody, that we would give them clear direction as to expectation. In other words, I guess I'd say define these things and take the component parts that need to be answered, especially coming away, I think, from the September 30th joint meeting with Preserve the Bluff, which is the 8 acres that is next door. Let's understand as a community how that partnership, how this looks overall, so that we aren't independent in our thinking, but that we combine those thoughts. And the more that becomes clear in those discussions, I think the more credibility it builds into this process for the community. So I would make a motion that we table this for further discussion, with not an intent to discourage, but with an intent to try to answer some questions. So we have a lot of questions.
So Commissioner Gamble, just for clarification to the gentleman here, you're asking for a postponement after September 30th to readdress it between the two groups and then come together again? Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
thank you, Madam Chair. If I were to be specific on this, I would say that is one component part. I think the other thing is that if we have the city saying to us, hey, do this, we'd like to see this, we should know the basis under which we approach this, as opposed to having another entity asking us to do something without clarity on what our financial commitment will be and our expectation. So I think my recommendation would be to table this with the understanding that that Mitch, working with whomever, would put together an outline of what needs to happen sequentially in order to bring us to the point that we would put this out, if in fact that's what we're going to do. We do have the opportunity, certainly, to pursue this on our own to get that regional designation. And I would certainly be willing to help in that regard to accomplish what our objective is. So I think we need to identify the component parts and then determine how we're going to do that. And that evaluation then I think would better inform the board in making this decision. So my motion is to table this, request that we put an outline together, which would include that meeting, the findings of the September 3rd meeting, and then bring it before the board with response to those questions.
Before we have a second, I'd like your response.
Go ahead.
Okay, Commissioner Gamble, Madam Chair, Commissioners, I actually, with the greatest amount of respect, would disagree in the fact that it would be easier for us to do this internally or to be able to have this. We have one half of one position, staff time and everything. The city had actually just gone through this process for the regional designation, and they retained a consulting firm to be able to do this. We have sat down with the planners in the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails part, and there's the expectation that we would have the staff time and resources available to actually go through that process and that list, I think is fairly unrealistic, especially if you look at, in comparison to the amount of funds that would be potentially expended to that. I think it would be actually a better attempt or a better pull for our finances and time to be able to pull in a consulting firm. Yeah, these questions do need to be answered with regards to the city's involvement in the joint powers agreement. And, there's a reason why, for those who may remember back, 20, 30 years ago, there was an old ski hill plan, and it sat there and nothing ever happened. Well, we had this plan. It was adopted by the board, and we're just trying to move forward on this. And this gives us some of that clarity. it's just getting in an RFP. We're not saying at this point in time where we want to commit to that process. We're saying at this time, we just want to go out for a request for proposals, which will more clearly define what that process is going to be. That doesn't cost us any money or any time to be able to get that, but it does keep that ball kind of rolling, and we can answer those questions that you have, Commissioner Gamble, in that same time frame.
Administrator Treble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was going to be my recommendation as well, is I wonder if we could simultaneously, while we issue the RFP, also work on that outline, so that when this comes back before the board, we have both sets of information. We have the outline of addressing the questions that you have raised, Commissioner Gamble, as well as the information from the RFP. Again, there's no cost to issuing the RFP, so my hope would be that we could have everything needed to consider the decision as we move forward at that time.
Commissioner Gamble?
I appreciate the response, Tim, and the input. If I'm making a request for a proposal on something that it doesn't have clarity, then I feel that I'd be going through an exercise that would be better if we had the clarity. So, and maybe I'm misunderstanding just the general nature of this request, but there are a number of components here that need to be addressed, and I just think that you can look at what we have gone through multiple times as a county with the board in evaluating proposals relative to expansion, law enforcement center, and we do a lot of due diligence to make sure we're clear so that our expenditure of time and resource is well spent and well defined. And when I look at this, I just think that there's a number of things that we could bring clarity to, and certainly whether internal or external and best use of time and dollars, those are things that when looked at in the context of clarity, the board evaluates in making an informed decision. So I agree, I certainly agree with that.
Travis?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, Commissioner Gamble, again, with all due respect, I mean, I wanted to clarify that we don't have any codified visions for the park as it exists. We have some ideas as to what it may include. However, a lot of what would be done in this process would be to engage stakeholders to clarify that vision. There is also some time built into, coming up with some joint powers agreements. It's kind of one of those things where it's just an effort to kick it off, and then as we go through the motions of, planning this park, those things will be clarified, and so certainly we all have our ideas within the Parks and Trails Commission about the things it should include. We've done community surveys to identify what people want to have included in the park. However, we haven't boiled it down to exactly what it will be, and this process would kind of show intent from Cook County towards, Grand Marais that, hey, we are engaging in this process. We want to include everybody at the table. Here's what we have done to, engage with a landscape architecture firm, and as we go through it, we will clarify what's going to be done, and that's kind of the intent of the process. So, go ahead.
Commissioner White?
You started back in 2018, and I remember I was on the school board, and the school wasn't, as a member of the school board, we were being asked if the parking lot perhaps, and then could be used as a place for people to park to get up to there. I mean, you hadn't figured out a trail or access across the trail. And then to, excuse me, have permission or easement across one end of the school property for accessing a trail to get there. And it was unanimous, the decision was it's a safety issue for our kids, because who's going to be crossing that? I mean, it's not locals, and even if it were locals, it's a safety factor there. So that was then, and a lot have changed. Is that the value? Because this will not, do the locals really want to have this place to go to, or is it another tourist amenity that we are providing on the back of the taxpayers? And that is a concern. And what about the people that live on that road? What does it do to their quality of life to have an increase, which if it were a tourist location, it would have a lot of cars on it. So I believe that we need to go back even farther. Is this really something that is, what is the value to developing that bluff? Is it for commercial? Is it for income? Or is it to improve the quality of life for locals? And on that, I question greatly. So I would like to have it, and having an outside, a landscape architecture firm, or to have consultants, we drive the consultants and tell them what we're going for. And so what are we going for? Are we going for a place for people to come and walk? And, I mean, the details are not that important at this moment, but who are the people that would do that? And I just suspect that many locals, if that bluff were developed and the tourists use it, and I'm not, we all know that the numbers, the volume of people that come to this county change our culture in summertime especially. The quality of life for our little quaint little village, that type of thing, is impacted. And that this is how it is. However, we have a piece of landscape undeveloped, and do we want to develop that? And I do agree with Commissioner Gamble, we should look at that area as one big piece of real estate, not, so I in favor of tabling it to find out. Two, if this is something that the city wants to do too, then this has to be a joint powers thing, because we pay for enough things already, our taxpayers do. And two, back to the question, why are we developing that up there? That's my question, and I'm not set on that at all, but do you have an answer as to why we are developing that? And I'll...
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner White. Yeah, there's a lot there. I'll attempt to touch on all of it. I mean, firstly, why? And you're using development as kind of a broad spectrum term. In the survey process, it was made very clear by, the nearly 400 people of the community who responded to the survey that they would like to see a light touch. They don't want to see whole-scale development, so in that, we have interpreted that to mean silent sports, hiking trails, maybe some biking trails, is about the extent of what you would see, as you go up the bluff. Within the plan as well, there were things like campgrounds, disc golf, the dog park was a portion of that. There was some identified areas for creating residences. And so I think it's our motivation from the Parks and Trails Commission to do this, one, to set it aside for this use, this recreational type use, because if we don't make some decisions on what it can be, a different commission at some point in the future could decide to do some greater development, so this is where we're coming from. I think there were some other things I wanted to touch on, but, and then additionally, as you're aware, to address, from the survey, it was also identified that this is just going to be another amenity for tourism. While I I can understand that viewpoint. It's been my motivation to try to address that specifically by engaging with Active Living Steering Committee, Jens Jacobson with Community Education. I have some intent to reach out to other, local organizations, whether that's higher ed, various members who engage in art and all those great things that make our community wonderful. And so just to speak to that is, I am bringing those groups to the table, and I'm specifically engaging with them to identify how can we assist what you need? How can we build upon this so that it engages all members of the community and not just tourists? And then as well, to speak to the counterpoint of that, I mean, tourism it's what we have made our bread and butter in Cook County. And I feel like if we create opportunities for folks to engage recreationally just right outside of town, it's going to deal with issues like congestion and events and things like that that create, conflict between locals and tourists. And so that's where I'm coming from with it. On top of that, this has just been the responsibility that's been given to me. And being that the board set aside this budget item at the beginning of 2025, I've been doing my darndest to try to figure out a way to get it done in spite of all the, roadblocks that have been in the way, so.
So we have a motion on the table to postpone it. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I just recall in the past when we looked at survey results and we looked at the importance of recreational use, that we did talk about low impact, and Mitch mentioned hiking and biking, which are local interests. And I actually see that, that low impact use ties in a lot with what Preserve the Bluff is about. And so I like the idea of interacting with that group. I think that's really important to do. But I do think moving forward with their request for proposals is a very wise thing to do at this point. It gives us an opportunity to get information and take a look at the survey information that we already have and make some good decisions moving forward.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one survey we've done, that we've got 55% of the people that are locals saying no. In other words, when you look at the comments that are made, which I read last night again, that there's genuine concerns that are in conflict with what is being proposed. Here's the thing, is that if we have just the one survey, we haven't done any town halls, we haven't had, that I'm aware of, is that answering the question relative to who are we serving here and what do we value, having encouraged that Preserve the Bluff, that the people that want to preserve the bluff get together and do something after making the motion that the intent is to purchase, but the people that want to preserve the bluff need to take the lead and do this. They have done that with diligence. This is why the meeting was encouraged on the 30th, so that we can see where we're together. Because my encouragement to the Preserve the Bluff Committee is, you cannot have a marketing slogan that says preserve the bluff when that's, and your intention and your values might be in conflict with another entity that wants to develop a park, and you can say soft, but if you look at the things that are on there and the component parts, that needs to be clarified. There needs to be clarity, and that's why the discussion should happen. And I think that discussion, not only with that entity that has an intent to preserve the bluff, and you say, what are they looking for? They say, we need to preserve the bluff because we don't want to affect the water system that goes down to Lake Superior. We don't want light pollution. We don't want, we want to leave that as it is. So I'm just saying, these two groups figure out what you have in common in your values, let the community inform this, and then drive that direction. If we as a board, without all of those elements answered, move forward with a resolution, It looks like many things that we do in the county where we move forward with our agenda independent of that local voice and independent of understanding one another's values in another area. All I'm saying is, let's table it and bring some of those items into play that help us to further clarify so that we say to the community, we do this through a process that those voices are heard, they define, we worked with interested groups, because it's an expenditure of money. We've seen it before where we have money that comes up front, somebody gives us money to do something, and we haven't even defined what it's going to cost us to maintain, how the distribution of revenues. There's so many component parts. I've said before we started this conversation, I empathize with your position, but I want to be sure that we build integrity and process in this, and I think it doesn't do any harm at all to say, let's table this, answer some of these questions that say to the community, we're going to do this, and let community informed and other organizations that have a vested interest, the 30th is going to be that discussion. We've had this discussion many times in public, in Preserve the Bluff, that we need to understand where we're at on this, because if we're going to have a message, be sure our message is consistent. Otherwise, what we should say is, preserve 80 acres, because we don't control, we don't have a shared value as to how we're going to approach the rest of that bluff. So those are all things we haven't answered that. We've created an opportunity for that discussion coming up the 30th.
Commissioner White?
Good.
This is not you're just the messenger, okay? So, you said town halls. I think we need to take it out to people that don't sit down and watch us at some
have.
convenient point in their life, or they're not listening in now, or they're not here. Take it out to and speaking to the lake associations, talking to all those people. Will they come and use this? Were the people, I mean, is this what we want to see as a community? What is the value for the people that actually have a vested interest in this county? And so 1.2 million tourists, I think they bring in a lot of money. Just look at the numbers. I don't think that we're faltering any for that, with that income. There's a point where we can't, the infrastructure, the roads, the amount of time, even the amount of time that people do the paperwork on for something, because it's an additional burden to have to fix something after, or to pick up more garbage, whatever it might be. And I understand the importance of tourism in this county. This is what the county decided would be our primary source of income. I understand that. But we have to have things in balance, and I very much would like to know what the values are of now, in this time. And so, this isn't personal. You were tasked to do this, and these are conversations that need to be had throughout the entire county. West End, East End, up the trail. Everyone needs to have input into this. And if indeed another park, trails to walk in is wanted, the public has spoken, and then we go forward. But they need to have some details. Commissioner Gamble is right. I hadn't thought of this. What does it talk? Who's going to take care of the upkeep as time goes along? Who's going to pick up the litter? Who's going to? I hadn't thought of those, but that happens because if you walk on our road, we get lots of garbage in the ditches, and that's just our little road. So that's.
Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner White, Madam Chair, Commissioner Gamble, and the rest of the commissioners. You guys, you're gonna decide what it is that you want to do, and that's going to be fine. I mean, we are merely tasked with just fulfilling what it is that the direction that we get from you guys. I do want to make the distinction, and Commissioner Gamble, you did make that clarification, and this also should be really clarified, that we are talking about two different things. That Save the Bluff is strictly for the 80 acres that is private property right now to prevent it from being developed. that is only peripheral mentioned in our plan, in the Sawtooth plan, as something that could potentially be able to host maybe hiking trails or something, but to keep it low impact. And that's the whole discussion on here, is keeping things very low impact on there. Another thing to kind of clarify is the fact that this plan is intended to go ahead and gather up that information, and we will know through the process of this plan and the RFP coming back is to the extent that the city would be involved. I mean, all these questions would be answered during that planning process, and then even if that plan is adopted, the plan is adopted primarily to be able to hit regional designation. That does not even mean that those things are laid out and there are even going to happen. What that means is that there is this plan, it's the potential, and we see the things up there, and it allows for user groups to be able to put in for grants to be able to make it happen. Good example is the dog park. The dog park was mentioned in the plan, and the dog park, we were able to kind of circumvent, I don't want to say circumvent the system, but it was very well publicly processed and gotten through because the logistics and everything like that are easy for it to go through. So that was actually part of the plan, and I think a very welcomed part of the plan, and I think locals and tourism hears it, and I don't think it is, and Sawtooth Bluffs was ever intended to be this competition or contention between tourism and locals. It was just to be another area set aside that would prevent development of it, so there wouldn't be housing development on there. It would be low impact kind of stuff. And that is the intent of it. And this just, the plan sets the plan, and anything that would happen subsequent to a plan. So we would put out for an RFP, get that back. We would be able to gather up that information before we'd even go ahead with the plan. So we're not spending any money right now at all. So we would come back to the board with an RFP, with further information on that, and decide whether or not to go on with that process. That planning process would answer the rest of all of these questions that we're talking about right now. And then we would decide to either adopt the plan or not adopt the plan. And then if it is adopted, that doesn't even make things happen. We would have to come back to the board for each individual request to say, is this something that we want to see, and be able to have the same discussion 12 years later from now, however long that takes for it to get there.
Yep. And
Travis?
too, yeah, I just want to clarify too that when one does engage in regional designation process with Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission, part of that process, you have to identify what components you want to have. How are you serving underserved communities? What is the economic considerations pertaining to parks and trails in your area? How are you going to operate and maintain this? So as Tim is saying, like, we will identify all of these things. However, like, between myself trying to engage in town halls, to engage in all of these different things, and really spread myself too thin as a half-time position to do this, we're employing somebody to do it for us. We have set this budget item, in the 2025 budget. Additionally, we have other funds within potential PILT monies that Brady and Tim have identified. And so it's I just want to clarify that, yes, we don't know everything. However, this process is created to engage everyone in the conversation, not just one interest group, to bring all of them to the table, whether that's from the city, from county, user groups, stakeholders. All of those people will be brought to the table in the process. And then at the end of it, hopefully we have a very clear idea of what it's going to be. And then if we achieve regional designation through Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission, it opens us up to legacy dollars to then create all of those components. And so it's kind of the most streamlined process that we have identified. I'm here at the recommendation of the Parks and Trails Commission because of this. It's something we have dedicated ourselves to since this item was put in the budget. So, pass.
I'm ready to call a vote, but before that, are there any other comments?
Just
Administrator Treble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one comment, and that is because there isn't alignment on how to proceed with this item, I wonder if an approach could be to bring this to a committee of the whole following the meeting on September 30th, so that collectively we can talk about what are those items that we need more clarity on before we can move forward. So I just wanted to put that out for consideration as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Gamble, do you wish to amend your?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying table it, and I think that's the correct approach. We're just saying we need to have more information, we need to have more direct, and just in the interest of time, I won't go into more discussion, which the board will appreciate, but my amendment is that we table it and that we wait until after the September 30th meeting, which is one component that I think is an important component, and it demonstrates to the community that we're willing to listen, and then we would schedule it for a committee of the whole for a discussion. And I would certainly be willing to bring to that meeting an outline of expectation.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Sullivan, did you have a comment?
So I just have a question. Are you amending your motion to include the committee of the whole following the September 30th meeting?
Sure.
All right.
Okay. So we have a motion to postpone and bring it to the committee of the whole first part of October. Is that correct? All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes for now.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Madam Chair, if I just may say, thank you, Tim and Mitch, and thank you, Commissioners. I think it's important, and I appreciate the opportunity to have that discussion. And certainly anybody that's listening, if you want to weigh in, you're welcome to weigh in. But I appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
So Commissioner Gamble, you're on that committee that's meeting on the 29th?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan? are you?
30th.
30th?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we'll wait for a report from that committee to work with this committee and bring it all together at the committee of the whole.
Yeah.
Okay, we got that figured out. Thank you. Moving on. We're going to talk about the Devilfish Utilities easement. If you want to come forward to the table with the microphone, please. Good morning.
Hi, how are you? I'm John Hobday.
Okay.
Jean, do you want to lead this off, or what would you, how can I help the board understand what's going on?
Madam Chair, may I? Thank you. Assessor Thompson is not available today, and I don't have the factual background, so Mr. Hobday offered that he could be available today if there are questions. But basically, this is a recommendation for a resolution to authorize Brady Powers to grant an easement benefiting Arrowhead Electric across a portion of non-conservation tax forfeit county managed land for the state.
Okay. So it seems like it's going to be a positive thing to, work with fiber optic and with utilities and all of that, so.
Correct. It would be for underground fiber optic or overhead utilities as well.
And what area of the county is this again?
This is Hovland.
In Hovland.
Yep, in Hovland. It's near Esther Lake and the Devilfish Tower. So the Devilfish Tower was put in about 10 years ago and ended up being located about 100 feet from my property line. And I've held off on bringing power and fiber in for 10 years, but as I'm getting older, it seems like a good thing on a number of fronts. Had a milestone birthday this winter. So I met with Arrowhead, and there were two routes. One followed the road into my property, which crossed both state and county property. The other one across 29 acres between the tower and my cabin that I own. So he said, this is perfect, no county, this is Arrowhead representative, no county approval necessary, it's private land. go ahead and have it cleared. So I cleared a 12-foot path, and unbeknownst to me, it crossed just a corner of the tower property on the tax forfeit property that Gene just mentioned. So, yeah, Mitch called me with the cease and desist and went out to the property, but called back within 5 minutes. I said, it was not, I kind of did what was recommended to me. So the motion on the table is to grant, as I understand it, this easement on county property, which I'm saying is 100 feet, it may be 200 feet. From the tower and the parking lot for the tower, it's up the hill, from here to the GIS office. It's a small amount of land. After that, it goes on to private property in my 9 acres, and would then, go underground all the way. On the total, another benefit, if you will, for Arrowhead is that the distance through that private property is 1,500 feet, and one roll of coil of cable is 1,600 feet apparently. So that was a nice thing for Arrowhead as well, as opposed to up and back down, which would be 2 extra blocks and some splicing and all the rest. So that's that's kind of what happened.
Okay. Commissioner White?
Well, I make a motion to approve the grant of easement for utilities for Arrowhead Electric and the fiber optic to lay it. So,
Arrowhead?
Arrowhead, yes.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes
Thank
unanimously.
you, Madam Chair and Chair people.
Thank you for sitting through.
Oh, no, it's super interesting. I was almost clapped after the geology portion. That's really great.
We'll encourage you to participate as long as you're getting older.
Well, I have to retire.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, Human Resources. We did have a presentation of the Minnesota Paid Family Medical Leave at the Committee of the Whole, and so now Allison's going to bring it before the board.
Madam Chair, can I request a slight change just to preserve Brooke's continued time here? Could we go up to the one consent agenda item in regards to the promotion of Caleb? Because I brought Brooke in just in case there were questions that he would be able to respond to.
Okay, so then we would be looking at item G.
Correct.
Administrator Treble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is to approve the promotion of Caleb Johnson. I know that with this promotion, we did open this up internally to make sure that we had a fair process and had some internal applicants that were then vetted and offered the position to Caleb Johnson. So I will turn it over to Allison and to Brooke to add any additional detail.
Yeah, I can just give a little kind of history on how the year went with my FTEs down in custodial and maintenance. We started out the year with a vacant 140 FTE that was approved before I started here and was vacant. We were going to fill that position, and then we had David had the injury and the pending retirement, so we decided not to fill that position to save my budget, basically, to cover an added employee of David being on disability and recovery and then his impending retirement. So currently I have 3 FTEs for custodial and 3 FTEs for maintenance, and we're just moving Caleb into that day position, which has more responsibilities than the custodial 110. So we'll move him up to a 140, and David's retirement will happen later this year. And then I have another retirement happening in the spring for another maintenance tech. So we will be basically just sitting full with my current positions until the end of the year. And then next year, we'll kind of reevaluate when I have the 1 3/4 position open in the spring.
Okay, Commissioner White?
An FTE for the listening public, full-time employee.
Yeah.
40 hours a
Full-time
week.
equivalent.
That's all, yeah.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that background information. The reason that I had requested to pull it for discussion is I wanted to understand that, and I apologize for the fact that I didn't have that history. But looking at the budget, I just wanted to understand, we've gone through where we've had some vacant positions and therefore monies haven't been spent, and now we have them and we have that pool of money. So it's a matter of two things. One is items that appear on the consent agenda that have to do with new positions, I think should be discussed. If they've been discussed, then that perspective is in place. Otherwise, I would recommend we not put items on the consent agenda that are new positions. So the question that follows is, looking at how it's affected the budget for 2025, which you explained, and I appreciate it, it's going to 2026, how we see the difference between the 2025 and dollars allocated for your department and 2026 dollars allocated with this new defined position.
Well, in 2026, we'll start off, David's retirement will happen this year in 2025, so I will start off 2026 with 1 vacant position in custodial, and then early 2026, I will have another retirement, which I believe is a half or a 3/4 position. Or
He's half. I think he's half FTE.
So then I'll have another retirement of a half FTE in 2026. And once that half FTE retires, exact date we're not sure of, then we'll kind of reevaluate how we're going to backfill that 1.5, possibly with just a 1, is kind of what I'm thinking at this time. And, yeah, so, I mean, budgetary-wise, we'll be sitting just fine.
All right. And that's basically my question, looking at this, is just trying to understand how will that affect our budget, and how are you thinking so that you have, what you need to be able to do what you're doing, so.
Yeah, we'll be in good shape. We'll be
Yeah.
a little short-staffed in the early 2026.
Yeah.
But I got a good group of guys, so we'll be able to.
I appreciate the
handle it.
discussion, thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Okay.
Thanks, Brooke.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the promotion of Caleb Johnson to Maintenance Technician 1.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. All right. Back to paid family medical leave. All right. So last week, I came before the Committee of the Whole to present information to you on Minnesota's program for the paid family medical leave. That will be effective beginning January 1st of 2026. This is a mandated requirement for really all employers in the state of Minnesota. So we're just kind of working on navigating those complexities, what's required. And in one of the kind of decisions that is required, which I touched base on last week, is there are basically 2 paths forward with our administration of paid family medical leave. We can either use the state, we can opt in and use the state system that they're creating and going to be implementing, or employers can go through a third party, a private administrator, an insurance carrier that already has like a pre-approved or what they call an equivalent program. So I laid out the information that we had gathered, myself working with Integrity Benefits, who is our ancillary benefit provider, along with the support with the Benefits and Wellness Committee. And we had determined, weighing out kind of the pros and cons, that it would be beneficial for our organization to utilize an insurance carrier with an equivalent plan for the private administration of paid family medical leave. And through the RFP process, we have narrowed down that we would like to utilize MetLife for that benefit and that program. I do want to add, so I provided some facts last week and some numbers of like where we were seeing other counties going.
I did have a paid family medical leave webinar last week, at the end of last week, and they provided information that at this point, 55 counties are going the private administrative route. So I think that also speaks a lot to the path that we have chosen. So today I'm just requesting formal approval of that path to continue with proceeding with the private administration using MetLife for the paid family medical leave benefit effective January 1st of 2026.
Any comments, Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to request the approval of MetLife for a private administration of Minnesota paid family medical leave.
I'll support that.
Any further comments or questions? Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's important for the public to understand that this is a mandated requirement, which you stated, and it's in the agenda here, but this is something that the state of Minnesota has mandated, and the basis under how it gets paid is also defined in that. We have yet to make that determination. I appreciated the discussion in the committee of the whole and the work that you put into doing that comparison analysis, and we concluded that based upon that understanding, that given MetLife's reputation, experience in this area, and service level and lower cost, that this is a good decision. And that's reaffirmed by the webinar that you just participated in, that 55 of our 87 counties are doing this. So I appreciate the effort that informed the board on this decision. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Any other comments or questions? So we have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
So now, are we going to talk about items H and I?
I believe I'm going to wait until we have the administrator updates. So we'll move on to item number...
Madam Chair, excuse me.
Yeah.
While Allison is here, because I'd request to have those pulled,
Okay.
that my question would be best answered while
Okay.
she's here.
We will turn this over to Administrator Treble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for item H, the resignation of Lily Gruber-Schulz, this is a resignation that we were anticipating for some time. Due to personal reasons, she has decided to resign in her position. Are there any questions on item H?
Commissioner Gamble?
Madam Chair, thank you. Yeah. And my reason for pulling these two was when we see the resignation, again, it's on the consent agenda, which means we aren't having discussion unless we pull it from the consent agenda, is just for the board to be informed and understand when it comes to resignations, if exit interviews are performed, which informs us so we know, whether it's a healthy context or an unhealthy context. And given some of the issues we've had of late, that's why it's helpful. You mentioned in your your statement on it that for, personal health reasons or whatever.
Not personal health reasons, just for personal reasons, Commissioner.
Okay, all right, okay. But again, the intent then is just to understand the context and why employees leave. That's why I'm raising this issue. So if exit interviews are conducted, then we're gathering that information. It's another discussion how that information is disseminated to the board so the board has awareness.
Right.
Yes, Jean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will just interject here that even when the exit interviews are conducted, that becomes part of the personnel data and part of their file, so that the employee would have to release that data specifically to the board in order for that to be disseminated publicly. It's something that can be used by HR moving forward, but it's not something that can be publicly available.
Continue. Continue.
Yeah. Thank you. Understanding fundamentally why exit interviews are conducted is to help an organization understand, is there something we can do to retain employees? And so how we can do that in the context of the structure of employee and confidentiality and everything else. It's just making sure that we, number one, conduct them, and number two, have a method of allowing it to inform us so that we can be better stewards of the employee force.
Administrator Trevor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we are, Commissioner, we are conducting exit interviews. We offer them to all employees upon resignation and when they leave their positions. That information is being reviewed by HR. I have on occasion requested that information as well, and so we will continue to work on ways that we can leverage the information that we receive to make sure that we are making decisions that are in the best interest of the county as we move forward.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the discussion, and with that, I would make a motion to approve items H and I.
Support.
Any further questions? Okay. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed,
Thank
same
you.
sign, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
I think, too, in the future, we have to really understand that there are reasons for people to move on, and they are personal and private, and there's some times that we understand that, but we do want to say to the public that people are being hired and people are moving on. So that's about as many details as we really would need. So thank you, Attorney Peterson and Administrator Treble for working in that area. Okay, does anybody need a break? Would you like to move on? I guess we'll move on. If you need a break, just get up and take your break. Moving on to item number 8, Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first item is to approve unorganized fire district levies. All of our levies have to be approved before September 30th. We report all of them to the state. Some of them we approve. We're also getting other levies for the city, for the towns, et cetera, that you don't approve, but we still have to submit them. So here you've got the Gunflint Trail, Colville, Hovland, Maple Hill. Maple Hill is not in here specifically. They first sent their full budget, and then they made some changes. They talked about it, but, so I've got the changes in that summary form, but I just don't have their full budget again, so that's the only reason it's not attached. You'll see that later. But these need to be approved for the state, so ask for your approval, those levies. Those are, as we understand, fire levies are are specific to the fire districts, so these levies are set just for those particular areas.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brady, you mentioned that, the state requires that they're approved. What's the timeline on that?
September 30th.
Okay. The one thing I would say is, unless I missed something along the way, is that these are coming into us, so that this is the first we've seen it. So when we're looking at our budget processes, and we have submittals in our packet here, as you mentioned, we don't have 3 of the 6 budgets to be able to actually look at it.
3?
Yeah. In other words, when I look at the 26 proposed unorganized fire levies, included in our packet were Hovland and Colville and Gunflint Trail.
Yeah.
But we don't have the other 3, which is Lutzen, Maple Hill, and Grand Marais Extension.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So Lutzen has a specific formula. It's just a percentage based upon market values relative to the fire district, the extended fire district, and to the city. And so that one is strictly a formula. And with the city extension, that one is a very complicated formula created back in the 80s, I think, where they look at fire calls, they look at expenses, and they look at a number of things. So I typically don't get Mike Roth's numbers for that until probably close to that limiting date. But that's under a joint powers agreement with the city. So, anyway. It's typical that the small fire departments, we ask for them early. It's typical that they don't get them to us early because they're volunteer organizations, and it's when they meet and make their final decisions and get their budgets together. We've given them a lot of leeway over the years, so this is not unusual at all. It may not be ideal, but it's nothing unusual.
Madam Chair, so looking at this then, we have Colville at a 9% increase. We have Gunflint Trail at a 2.81% increase. We have the Lutzen at 8.7%, and we have Maple Hill at 11.94% increase. Kudos to Hovland for holding it at no increase over last year's. But I guess my point is that when we looked at our budget process and being informed and having discussions and understanding all of this, I think it would be good that those that are in leadership positions with these, fire departments, which certainly are critical and important entities for our county, but I think it'd be good to have discussions to understand so that we are all included in this when we come to, working our budget. If you look at the library, as I understand it, the library has a parameter in which it doesn't have to come before us if it's held within 5%. So we basically have a policy that allows a 5% increase in library budget annually. And there doesn't have to be any discussion to understand that. And I'm just saying, I think it's good when we have discussions, and so that policies don't define moving forward, just like we have entities that like to become line items as opposed to having to negotiate for contributions. I think the discipline and the integrity of process is important.
And this doesn't end discussions. This is a preliminary budget.
Yeah.
So you have until December to discuss and make the changes.
Well,
So-
and if that's understood, if it's just saying we have this September 30th to report to the state and say
To
we've
report
approved these, then it gives the appearance of this is it, it's set aside, we
Well,
approve it.
everything on September 30th are proposed budgets.
All right,
Just
appreciate
as ours is a levy that we set high because we expect to make cuts going into December. So these are proposed budgets by the fire departments, and we have the next couple of months to look at them. We could make that very clear to them. We want these in, a couple of months early so that we can look at them. And we've tried that in the past, and then they've had issues, and we've done them all together. You might get some of them early and others not, depending on their, as volunteer.
Yeah.
They seem to have,
If we said that, there was a cap on the amount of money on the budget that we wanted to put towards that, in this case, fire departments, and like airports and other entities, when there's monies, some years airports don't need it, and other years they do need it, and so airports as a collective, understanding that sometimes, well, you take this dollar. Same way with the highway department. When we look at allocated dollars, they could say, this year I don't have a project, so you can take the money that we normally would get. So that partnership is sort of aware of it. And I think that's why the discussion says, well, Overland last year they didn't, but this year now they do. Well, we don't, Lutz, we don't need what we need. And so that discussion is just mindful that as a county, a community, we have that opportunity through discussion to manage budget with that awareness. So appreciate the conversation.
Sure.
With that,
if you look at the history, and I could provide you a history, you'll see a lot of these budgets, they just remain the same for year after year after year, and then an expense arises, and you'll see a percentage increase like these, and then they'll sit idly for 5 years on the same levy. So overall, their percentages, they look high this year, but you wouldn't see that over a long term. So
Yeah, that's the other thing. I appreciate when we have context perspective because
Sure.
we see the pattern as
Yeah.
opposed in trends and different things in that regard. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the proposed unorganized territory fire levies for 2026.
Support?
Have a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, the next two levies to approve are the EDA and the HRA. And I see the Chair and Vice Chair of the EDA are here. I'll preface this, in both of these proposed levies, EDA and HRA, they're both looking at a slight cut from last year in the 1 percentile range. And I'll leave this to Howard and Peter to make some comments, and you can address your questions to them.
Great. Thanks, Brady. Good morning, everybody. Yes, as Brady mentioned, the budget for 2026 is down versus 2025. Our approach was to take a zero basis on the budget and build it up based on what we needed. So down about $7,000 versus the current year, driven largely by a reduction in rent and legal expenses, supplies, and IT, but importantly, protecting the Small Business Development Grant Fund, which represents about 39% of our total budget. Interestingly, in 2025, a lot of demand for small business grants. In fact, we had to freeze the program in August, determine what our actual balance was, and issue one final grant, and the money is now depleted. So this is somewhat of a new circumstance versus previous years in which we've taken all 12 months to expend those funds. So by virtue of an awareness campaign that we ran in 2025, which increased both awareness and interest in the grant program, and word of mouth, protecting that grant program for 2026 was paramount for us. But other expenses, we took a pencil to where necessary.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question under the line item Business Development Fund. What was that fund in 2024?
$200,000.
Okay, and where did those funds originate from?
Our levy, as part of our.
Okay, so, and I just, what I'm wanting to understand is that if there were monies that came available to us, in this case, as a result of COVID with the CARES Act, if those monies came in and funded this, and so when we had if that funding source was through a special grant, the CARES Act, and then we now want to continue that on, but we don't have that funding source. That's why I'm asking that question. That's why I went back to 2024. And
Well, I think the money, we got quite a bit of money for COVID, and I think it mostly came through the Northland Foundation, where the EDA, this is a few years ago, we set up a program to get requests and then help out quite a few people during the COVID time to kind of bridge the gap and get them through. And the program we set up was if people were diligent and made the payments on those grants, or it was actually a loan program. If they got halfway through, then we'd gift the rest back to them, and I think it was virtually everybody was awarded that. So normally our development, where we have a pool of money, in this case $200,000, that we grant out to request for that, and for whatever reason, either our outreach or just need in the community, all of a sudden that program is in higher demand than we have resources to fill. So that's good news. you know.
So I guess my question pertained to the origination of those funds for this particular light item. And if you look at the revolving loan committee, those funds was due to a request that had been made that funded, was the seed funding for that. And then that fund continues because of the payback of those loans and any interest accrued. And I would assume that this would be how that is. You
No,
take
these are strictly grants. These are not.
Okay.
You know, the revolving loan are just that, revolving loans. This is a grant program. It's you know, we're beefing up our grant-making criteria and that whole, we're just tightening all that up and making more. We were pretty loosey-goosey over the years because you know, people come in, oh gee, I need a few bucks, okay, here. Now that we have more demand and we're legitimizing that whole process, and you know, it's working better and we have control. But it is strictly grant.
You would know historically, Howard, when that started out, how much money that was, and
well, we've grown it. I you know, it was I have a good memory, but it's short, so I don't know those numbers.
Well, and my point is that when we look at different organizations, you know, in the county, and how we address need, it's understanding how that need is funded. Yep. And in organizations, if we have crossover, we have this or that, what we're looking to do is we're providing these opportunities to address need, but we need to understand how there's duplication that might be an impact on levy overall. And that's the reason for the discussion.
Well, all I can say is, you know, where we struggled giving away the monies in that line item over the years that I've been on the board, the EDA board, that has ramped up. And like Peter said, this year, you know, we have had to cap it because we've run out of our funding.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. I mean, that's Economic Development Authority. It is, I take it to mean just that. We are out to help entrepreneurs and help the economy and spur economic development, and that's, I think we're doing our job in that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner White?
So that means, since it's a grant-funded program paid for by taxpayers, that means that the taxpayers are part owners of these businesses? No, they're not. I know that. But that means taxpayers are helping private businesses get started.
Correct.
Yes, indirectly, that's true. Get started or grow.
Yeah. I mean, that's our work. You know, we got a $500,000 budget, and 200 of that is, I mean, it's, if we weren't doing that, we'd just dissolve the whole thing. I mean, it's why are we here?
Continue.
So why don't you have a low-interest loan program instead of granting? I mean, if you're helping some, and it would be more, if people were struggling because of something happened with their startup, and you'd be more amenable to granting extensions or whatever, working with them, rather than giving the money away.
No, it's a very good question. In fact, the county operates the revolving loan fund, which, certainly in my view, and I think the view of other EDA commissioners, is an activity that we should consider rolling into the EDA, in as much as it's another tool, a loan tool. There's a purpose for grants and there's a purpose for loans, and I think the EDA can play that role in identifying, here's the need, and let's assign the right solution to that need.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I just wanted to point out that you'll see that there's a decrease in the rent for the EDA and an increase in the rent for the HRA. And that is because the HRA wasn't paying their fair share, and so now it is equitable. So I just wanted to point that out because it impacts both of the budgets that we're here to approve today.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Question, in your communicating with other economic development. Do they have a similar grant program that you're aware of?
Yeah, that I'm aware of, yes.
Yeah.
We're currently running, as I think many of you would be aware, without an executive director. So the NSDC, so Teresa, our former executive director, and Jason, formerly of the HRA, are helping us with the back end. And this slate of volunteer commissioners are picking up the rest of the slack. So what I don't have is deep relationships personally with other EDA groups, but based on my discussions with the prior executive director, to answer your question more directly, yes, that's my understanding.
Yeah, yeah. And it would be that when you're looking at an economic development authority, that it's normal and customary that this is an element of the provision of what they do for economic development. So when we're looking at our organizational structure within the county and we have these different entities, the HRA, the EDA, and all the different entities, we're attempting to do what we do to follow normal customary practices in order to create a healthy community, and we learn from each other in that regard. So I think it's just important for the public to understand that. To Commissioner White's point, that on the grant issue, that is basically part of the levy, which means taxpayers fund this. So taxpayers, the more that we tell the stories and see the advantage of those grant dollars, the more that the public can feel that this is a worthwhile cause, similar to what we have with non-mandated revenues that are paid for by the public. When we make decisions to send out these revenues, we're doing that, with taxpayer dollars. So our privilege and opportunity comes because of the community that contributes those dollars. Sometimes they have a voice to say yes, and sometimes they don't have a voice. But the more that we can reinforce the validity of these things, the more that it makes it more bearable, I guess I'd say. So thank you for the conversation.
Just on that point, if I may, the EDA has just begun to work with St. Catherine's University on a study of the impact of these grant dollars right here in Cook County, and so that'll be a terrific opportunity to share those stories once they're fully developed.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Sullivan?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2026 levies submitted by the EDA and the HRA at $512,962 and $287,444 respectively.
And I'll support that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes. Thank you very much for the
Thank you for
detailed information.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you for the support.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on now to item number 9, Administrator Trouble.
Madam Chair, one more item for me. The asking you to appoint election judges and absentee ballot board members for the 2025 special election on November 4th. These are to serve at the school board special election on November 4th. And the ISD 166 has authorized the county to run that election for them. That's why this request comes to you rather than to the school board, because they've authorized us to take these actions for them. So we provided a list of election judges. This election, the school has requested it be all mail ballot, and that we've decided, because it's a single question, that we'll hand count them. So that's why you see a small list of election judges, and we will not be counting them by precinct. They've also authorized that. So that's why there's a small number here. And of election judges, and then our office, as in the past, has served as the absentee ballot board itself.
Okay. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brady, I'm assuming we have, but have we done this way in the past?
Yeah. Yes, the last time, their referendum last year was part of the state election, so there was no separation. was just part of it. But back in 2015, another odd off-year election, we held a school election again. So we've done it in a very similar manner.
All right.
And some earlier years also, but that was the most recent.
Continue.
So, Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the election judges as presented.
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Brady, for all of that. Then item number 9 is administrator update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two brief updates today. Both are around the legislature. And so the first one is that there is a legislative luncheon that is scheduled for November 6th from 11 to 4 at Charlie's Alpine Bistro. And this will include Senator Grant Hochschild, Representative Roger Schraba, and Commissioner Rukavina from the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation. So the event information is on visitcookcounty.com, so I just wanted to make sure that the community is aware of that. And the second event is also through the Cook County Chamber of Commerce, and it is a House and Senate Capital Investment Committee meeting in Grand Marais, and that is scheduled for October 8th and 9th. And we just a few minutes ago received information on the schedule. So I don't know if it's yet up on their chamber website, but it should be soon. That's all I have today. Thank you.
Okay. I just received the update here. So, we'll work together and try to come up with, if there's any requests from the county. I plan on being there that day. I don't know if is it a 2-day one?
Yes.
It's 2 days? Okay. I don't know if I can be there both days, but I'll work with Administrator Treble. And anybody else who has suggestions as to our 2 minutes that we get with the legislators. It's not very long, but at least we could get on their agenda. So we'll work on that and bring all that forward together before the 8th of October.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you on your updates. Moving on to employee concerns, commissioner concerns. I did put in the packet a discussion about the appointments. January 1st, we always talk about reviewing our boards and our committees and our concerns and all of that. Then during the year, things come up. And so 2 items have come up. One regarding Commissioner Sullivan to fill a position, and then also we have the Taconite Harbor Advisory Committee, which I believe will be in process right now. They're asking for community volunteers to join that group, and then as a representative of the county and of the West End, that's in my area, so I will be eventually on that board. I think we all look at these positions as what does it do for the county, what kind of information can we disseminate to everybody, and then decide if it's worthy enough to be appointed or to be on those groups. And for my particular situation, yes, it'll be very well received to be on that committee, and maybe Commissioner Sullivan can fill in what happened with her appointment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Recently, I was interviewed for a possible inclusion as a county official to serve in a role that Sheriff Eliason had previously served in since March of 2024. And this is for the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness Collaborative. Sheriff Eliason, as we all know, is quite short-staffed, and it became very difficult for him to attend meetings. And in the charter, which I've distributed to all of you, and I do have it electronically, so if we choose to add this to our commissioner assignments, we can put that online for the public. But he was unable to continue in his role and suggested that I consider participating. And so I was notified and was given an interview and am honored to have been selected to serve as his replacement if, in fact, this group approves this appointment. My belief is my personal passion about the Boundary Waters and experience in it, along with my elected role in District 4, where we have lots of outfitters and businesses that are impacted by the Boundary Waters, in addition to just involvement with the Gunflint Trail Scenic Byway, Cook County Soil and Water, Cook County Coalition of Lakes, the Airport Advisory, Firewise. They all dovetail and fit really nicely. It makes this a really logical appointment. The group represents an effort to engage individuals and groups with really different interests in recreation, conservation, environmental advocacy, and commercial use in the Boundary Waters. And the collaborative is strictly advisory in nature. Its role is to also strengthen communication and coordination between different entities in St. Louis, Lake, and Cook counties. And we hope to learn and share information, strengthen our understanding and relationships, and also provide the public with transparency as it relates to wilderness laws, regulations, policy, and guidance. And so I've spent about 6 hours this month getting to know individuals on the committee, getting up to speed with their charter, and I attended several meetings related to visitor management, water quality, AIS, aquatic invasive species, search and rescue, fire management, and they have quarterly meetings. So these are all work groups that I attended. So what I'm asking is for the quarterly in-person meetings to have those added to my list of assignments. And I would not request any per diems for the work groups. I consider it a lot like my assignment with the Cook County Coalition of Lakes. I get a per diem when I meet with the full group, but not when I go to an individual lake association meeting. It really parallels that. So my request is that you approve my inclusion as the Cook County official to serve in this role, replacing Sheriff Eliason.
And my request would also be, right now, the potential is 2 meetings a month, which is going to be a lot. And I don't know if it's evening, daytime, in-person, Zoom, so we'll have to wait and see. And Commissioner Mills also has been asked to serve, so for the both of us. We're waiting to find out where we go with this. Commissioner White.
I have a question. The county has no ownership or promise of ownership of that elite property in Taconite Harbor. Is that true?
It's county land.
So we have total control over that going forward?
No, we don't have control. We hired a consulting firm.
Yes.
Who's going to work with the group until next.
This is for the public meeting.
Until next spring, and we'll work together. Minnesota Power owns the land, and so we'll have to work with them to see where this all goes. That's why we have both the public and then the advisory group to work together to proceed with some kind of way to deal with the land.
Okay. I hope everyone was listening to that question, that answer.
Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our commitment to evaluate our roles and responsibilities relative to committees and things like that and assignments is something that, again, we've committed to doing. I appreciate Commissioner Sullivan's foundational information on this and the handout and due diligence and things, and certainly given the representation that comes from District 4 and Commissioner Sullivan relative to the Boundary Waters and the interest there, Commissioner Storley and Commissioner Mills and their districts corresponding to Taconite Harbor, I'd make the recommendation that we approve these commissioners for these committee assignments.
I support that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll move forward as best we can and and report back when we can. And then just some commission reports and updates. I would start with our week with, well, it seemed like a week over with AMC in Alexandria. And we had wonderful presentations, and I was especially interested in the 4 counties who gave a report on their waste facilities and all the things that they're doing, that they want to do. And I just related to our own facility here, getting off the ground with one wall up and, and moving forward with that. And many ideas, too. One idea that struck me was several of the facilities that are already operating give their citizens a bag, and they put their food in the bag, and then that's collected. And they have a facility where they have a conveyor belt with an arm that reaches out and puts it in another box, container, and then that's made into char. And they can use it for fertilizer, or they can reuse the whole thing, which I think is wonderful. I don't know, maybe someday that'll come here too, but, you know, just something like that, you know, that you glean an idea on. Then we had our committee report, or our committees. I attended the public health. Commissioner Gamble, you attended which committee?
My committee is the safety.
Safety, okay.
Safety committee, yeah.
Okay. I'll just give it just a synopsis, which I already did at Public Health, about the fact that we're just really, really behind in updating. And so I won't elaborate that anymore because it's obvious, you know, what's happening there. I did collect the agendas for the government and environment, just to see what was on the agenda. But Commissioner Gamble, the one thing that has struck me is that there's been a report about in our jails, the use or non-use of prescriptions. Could you give us a little enlightenment on how that came about and how we're going to handle that?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. In the Safety Committee, we discussed that component, and we discussed the communications with which we've discussed this before, our patterns of coverage when it comes to weather reports and things like that. And so that was another item that we discussed. We've had this discussion relative to the pharmaceutical in the Arrowhead Regional Corrections as well, and as recent as the meeting that we just had. And I think that they wanted to have oversight to make sure that when we are recommending that a prescription be used for an inmate, that there was oversight to make sure that this was best practice. And part of our discussion at ARC is just the legal ramifications of this, wanting to be able to address need and not get tied up in all the red tape because of the oversight. And so I think this is something that is trying to be worked out. And it depends upon I think the credibility of those individuals in that position within the institution as to what we're doing. Because if it's a matter of having to make a call and check with their local doctor in order to be able to get affirmation on this, sometimes it encumbers the process. So it's trying to find the balance between that and being able to meet need as it needs to be addressed. Relative to the AMC conference, I did, Commissioner Sullivan had, because she was not able to attend it, made me aware of being able to visit the Douglas County facility, waste management facility there. So I took that tour. One interesting thing to note in that regard, in addition to the other 4 that made presentations, very, very interesting, and some of those entities that we had those presentations on, they would sit there and pick the cardboard from the whatever, and others, it was robotic. And it's pretty amazing to see the sophistication of that. As with all things, it comes down to dollar allocation as to whether or not we go with robots or we go with people or whatever. But it is interesting to see the different approaches and how they use this to our advantage. And the Douglas County one that I toured, they create steam, and so they have an incinerator where they're burning all of this garbage. And 3M has their plant in Alexandria. And when this facility came on board and started creating this steam, 3M plant uses steam in their operations, so they brought a plant up from South America to Alexandria because it created this opportunity. And I think that's definitely a return on an investment in that. So there's multiple things that you see there. It's not just dealing with the problem at hand, but trying to take that and make it a resource that adds value back to the community. So that was significant.
Well worth our time. The other thing I wanted to mention is I'm assuming that all of you received our newsletter from ARDC time back. We're trying to put together a newsletter maybe like twice a year, just an update what's going on besides my reports. So thank you for reading that. So I'll open it up for any other reports.
Madam Chair, I also would make a comment relative to the general sessions when it came to, and you alluded to it, Public Health, Human Services. We can look at our neighboring state, Wisconsin, and their processing methodology and their software and everything else facilitates a process that is a lot more seamless. I think our policy has been did they reference it as 30 years? We have not revisited this. And so part of trying to make this message real to us was at the beginning of that session, they had a public health human service individual in one of our counties begin the process of inputting information relative to one of their clients. And then as we went through the whole presentation, they'd say, how you doing, how you doing? And the amount of time it took to do that. And then you combine that experience with the knowledge that if you go to another family member, you got to start square one. And if they change services, you got to go back and start square one. And so when we're looking at what we're saying collectively as 87 counties to the state, we really need to invest in trying to streamline this process. It's a real problem. And it's part of what contributes to employee turnover when people who have a heart for serving the community are stuck with these processes that encumber that it's definitely something that needs to be addressed.
And we will address these concerns and how we kind of voted at the AMC at our district meeting, which is October 17th in Duluth. Okay. Anyone else with a report? Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had an opportunity to participate in the hazard mitigation planning. This was our second meeting. We met on September 11th, and there were 32 different people that attended the meeting representing county, city of Grand Marais, Grand Portage, townships, and other unincorporated communities. And what we did is take a look at the draft plan and discuss some of the key items that will be soon available for public review and submission to the Homeland Security Emergency Management and also to FEMA. And the meeting was held via Zoom and was very, very well facilitated by the University of Minnesota. So I appreciated that so much. And because I was attending that meeting, I was unable to attend the Cook County Coalition of Lake Associations, but our new county administrator, Treble Halbersma, was able to come to the last portion of that meeting, so they had an opportunity to meet her. And the HRA has been actively working with Neva Maxwell, going around the community, as you know, to continue to talk about the Roseau districts, the residential overlay. And we have our final 2 meetings coming up next week. Monday will be at the Schroeder Town Hall at 5 p.m. and Tuesday we'll be here in the Cook County Courthouse, right here in the Commissioner's Room. And this evening, the Cook County Historical Society will celebrate their 100th centennial anniversary. They have a dinner down at North House, and their annual meeting. It is sold out, unfortunately, so if you want to try to get in, they've been sold out for a couple of weeks. But that's a very exciting piece. And then we had the Airport Commission meet recently, and one of the things that we talked about are in Minnesota, the Electric Aviation Network. And there was a presentation that was given, and Rodney Roy, our airport manager, had participated in some of the input that was given from airport managers back about 6 months ago. So it was nice to look at now this completed survey and to talk about, although we aren't going to have electronic aircraft in the next 5 years, we likely will in about 10 years. And the fact that we will have charging stations at our airport, that's part of our master plan, is really important because those charging stations will help us to have electronic aviation that will deal with cargo delivery, which is a huge thing, and also medical issues. And it is really interesting to see the interface or lack thereof between my work with this new Boundary Waters Canoe Area Collaborative and the Minnesota Airport Commission. They aren't talking to each other. They haven't talked about, occasionally they will allow planes in the boundary waters. The 1964 Wilderness Act does not allow motors, but in case of issues for public safety, they do allow them. But there's been no discussion between the U.S. Forest Service and the Minnesota Aviation Network. So that's something I'm really pushing for, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of talk about the ways we can work together, and so I was excited about that. And then we recently had a safety committee, an internal committee here at the courthouse, and we are in the process of updating our maps because we have new employees in the basement, and so we need to make sure that all of our internal mapping is taken care of. So I appreciate that we're working on that initiative. Thank you.
And pancake breakfast.
Yes, pancake
Yes.
breakfast this Saturday out at the airport from 8 to 11. And Sawtooth Aviation will be there giving rides. The color should be absolutely beautiful. They moved this event 1 week earlier to try to take advantage of the color. And so there will be planes taking off from the runway, and they're going to bring up a couple of seaplanes from the seaplane base so that kids especially have an opportunity to look at those, or big kids like us. And so it'll be a really fun event. Thank you for mentioning that.
I was just thinking about the road construction, too.
Yeah, it'll be a challenge.
Yeah.
Because
But
the
I
grade
know.
is closed if you're coming from the west end, and
Yeah.
over the bridge, over the Little Devil track is still a little slow, but very passable.
Okay. Anyone else? We'll move on then to upcoming meetings. This afternoon at 3 o'clock, we have Budget and Facility Advisory Committee. And on Monday, October 13th, the courthouse will be closed in respect for the Indigenous Peoples' Day. And then the next day is our next board meeting on October 14th. We also have the sales tax comparison through July of 2025, and there'll be no other business. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. What day did you say the